Oh, shit. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to V.O.I.C.E.S RandomISH. I'm your host, Eldridge, here with my sisters, and to my right is my sister,
D'Artagnan Winters.
Hey, Allison Backstrom.
And we want to thank you for joining us again tonight here on V.O.I.C.E.S RandomISH. Tonight, we're going to be, again, visiting some of the topics that we started with last month. Remember, we were talking about the breast cancer awareness, domestic violence, and we want to just share a couple of stories from a couple of our viewers that we felt were really, really critical to wrapping up and moving into November, which is Men's Health Month. So I'm going to read a story that was shared with me by a colleague of mine. It's basically what she went through when she first got the diagnosis of her cancer scare. And I really thought that this was important because you want to feel the emotional aspects that the family feels and understand that you're not in it alone. She said, the biggest thing that I could express about cancer is make sure you have a doctor you feel comfortable with. She said, I found my first lump when I was 16. I felt embarrassed to say something, to go to a doctor and have them touch me. Also, never feel something doesn't need to be checked. She said, my aunt found a small lump and ignored it, and it was breast cancer. She went through treatment. It came back with a vengeance. This time she didn't wait. She immediately had a double mastectomy and went through chemo. She said, you're never prepared for all the changes that come with treatment. She has horses, enjoys being with them. They were there with her during her relaxing time when she was trying to stay home after the double mastectomy, but she was unable to be around them because of an infection. And the one thing that really, really hurt her is that she thought that that the horses would be there to help her get through, but she couldn't even go out to ride or do anything and be around with them. So the message that she wanted to share with us is that you never want to take anything for granted. You never ever want to ignore anything, and you always want to make sure that you find a doctor that you're comfortable with so that you don't avoid the care that you may need in order to stay alive. And that's the message that we really wanted to leave with people tonight, is because we saw this resounding theme that most people waited too long, that they ignored the signs, and or they did not have a doctor that they could trust. So just leaving you with that. If you really, really think that something may be going wrong, we ask you again to reach out to a friend or a family member. Don't ignore anything, especially when it comes to your body. And now I'm going to turn it over to my sister Dar, who she's going to share a story with you, and she'll tell you what that thing is about.
Hi, I'm going to take us back a little bit of a way when we talked about miscarriage and abortions and how it relates to men. Do they care? How it affects them? Those types of things. So we had a male viewer that reached out to me and wanted to share his story. So I am going to read his story to you so you can see firsthand a male's perspective as to how that affects them. So what started out is, I can't speak for all men, but my experience with this is, yes, it does hurt us, or the men that actually care. I was dating a chick in my early 20s. She ended up pregnant by me and eventually told me. My reaction, being a young 20-year-old man, had me pause on saying anything the first few seconds after she informed me. Just due to me realize that my life was about to change. I was so scared it was going to change for the worse that it made her feel like I was not accepting of it. Long story short, me and her departed from that conversation that day, and I went and told my father the news. For one, so he knew he was about to be a granddad, and for two, to get his advice on what I should do going forward. I'm literally 20 years old at this time. Pure joy filled up in his eyes, and his body demeanor was excited for us having a baby. It made me feel better about the situation as a young man that my dad vouched for us starting a family. On a side note, I had just lost my mother, his wife, a month before, so grieving and feeling a void in our lives was still there. So a new life coming into our family seemed to be the perfect healing for both of us. So he was all for having a grandkid to entertain and babysit when needed. Now, this process of me going to him after my girl at this time informed me she was pregnant was a few days, just a few days,
Okay.
after she told me. By the time I really got my mind be a father and came back to check with her, she had already went and had the abortion. For one, due to how I initially reacted to her telling me. And for two, those few days after, while I was getting encouragement from my father to stand up and be a man, those days totally killed her faith in me being there for her and the baby. Long story short, when I came back to her full of excitement to be a dad, she had the worst news of telling me that she aborted the child. My lesson learned in that still to this day is be careful how I react to someone's sensitive and important news, because how you initially react and either dampen or lighten the situation. That in itself hurt me as a young man, and it made me realize no matter how much I was hurt, after finding out she was hurting 10 times more for letting the baby go, on top of having to deal with the side effects afterwards with her body and emotions. Truly a lesson learned for me.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, the way that this person really articulates the emotional aspect of it. And remember when we were talking, and I thought that one of the ladies said that because of the fact that the woman carries the child and knows it, that they have a more of an attachment. But it almost sounded like to me that he was already connected. He just didn't know how to express or articulate the fear that I'm sure that we as women have. You know, like if you found out you was pregnant and it wasn't expected, don't you have some, when you have some type of emotional?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, you're scared. It's not like, you know, it's a human being. It's a child. It's a responsibility. So anytime you're not expecting it, it's, you know, like it's worrisome because it's such a huge life-changing thing that, you know, I mean, unless it's in a situation where, you know, your partner and you plan this out, and, you know, it's and you know exactly what. I mean, it can be scary.
I think it's even scary for people even when they plan it out, because you hear of why people don't tell anyone that they are expecting in their first trimester, because there's so much fear around it. But the one thing that I thought that really stood out about this is that the power of communication. How beautiful it would have been if the two of them could have really stood in their truth of the fact that they were both scared.
Right.
That's the piece that I think
it would have been a different outcome. It would have been a different situation. But the fact that he was so honest in saying, you know, like my reaction to her hurt her so badly that she went and aborted this child because she didn't think that I would be there. Like, how crushing is that? Like, to know that your words touched somebody to the point that they did something that they cannot take back.
Yeah, that's
you cannot take that back.
That's
so
a big event.
You have to live with
for the rest of your life.
She has to live with it because it's a decision that she made.
Right.
And he has to deal with it because it was a choice he made in the way that he reacted. Being young, you know, I get it. I was 16 when I had my first child.
Okay.
So I know the fear that comes in being a young parent.
Right.
I know the fear. I was more afraid to tell my mother to tell anybody.
I think that's the case in any of our family.
I was more afraid of that, but it's life changing.
And so you're able to see it, his perspective from the inside out. See, I can't relate to that because being married at 25, my daughter was born when I was 26. So it's a totally different perspective to be looking out. And I think you're right. What I heard him saying, you know, the reaction, that we really have to be careful about how we react to things, you know. And we live in a reactionary society that we don't proactively think about the consequences of any action that we, whether it's talking to somebody any old kind of way, looking at somebody and not making sense of it. We're in a reactionary society as opposed to a proactive society where we think about things and plan forward.
Right.
So when we find ourselves in these situations that are life-changing, the one thing that we do have to do is try to stand in our truth at that point.
Right.
And the truth is going to be different for everybody because it's impacted by your history. And that was the thing that came to my mind. I thought about what type of support or imagery comes from our society for a person that's in that situation. What do they see? They see people break up. How much is publicized about two young people getting together, figuring it out, going through this tragedy, and then deciding to keep the kid and moving forward?
Right.
You know, we can't continue to have these tragic stories. So we do need to think about the history. Was there anything else that we wanted to share with our audiences this month about miscarriage and the impact on families and friends, and just that we need to open up and really talk about it?
We need to not be afraid to talk about it. And we also have to watch our reactions. Because I'm one, like even just last week, we were having a conversation and I'm teaching myself, is it necessary? So it may not be nice. Somebody, I was giving the words that I'm supposed. No, it may not be nice, but is it necessary?
Right.
Is your reaction necessary? Are the words that you're using necessary? So that's me and my truth. Like, is it necessary? So I catch myself now a lot. Like, I'll stop, like, you know what? We ain't even gonna have that conversation right now. We'll come back to that later because it's not necessary.
Yeah, it's about picking the battles that we're gonna choose, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I always think too, like you said, is first of all, is what I'm about to say, is it true?
Right.
And true is in the matter of the beholder sometimes, y'all.
Right.
What you think might be true may not necessarily be true.
Right.
The other piece is if I say it, will it be something that's kind? Because remember what they said, if you can't say something nice to somebody, don't say something at all. So if it's not true, kind, and necessary for me, then it's not even a conversation, communication, or battle that I'm gonna engage in. I'm not doing it. It's a waste of my time. So how about you, Allie?
I think where I waver is maybe on the kind part. I mean, I don't think you should just say rude things, but sometimes, you have to.
It's necessary.
That's
how
It's necessary sometimes.
You don't have to go over the top, but you just factually and blatant. Sometimes you can't sugarcoat things. You need to speak the truth, and sometimes it's not always nice. Sometimes,
Right.
but it's necessary. So.
Right.
I just thought of some things where you sometimes
You
you
can't be nice in all things. That's my point. You can't be, but is it necessary to speak what it is that you're speaking? So that is mine now. That is where I am growing in me right now. That's my growth right now. Like, is it necessary?
And I did have to adjust because I have this quick wit and those quips, and I have to remember sometimes I may think it's funny or whatever, I'm making a joke, and the other person doesn't think it's kind. So that for me was learning, because I think sometimes when you don't know how to react to something, we cover it with humor.
Right.
And that was a learning thing for me, is that just really learn, okay, I'm going to tailor my humor and temper my humor, but I'm still going to have my humor. Let's not forget that. I'm going to give you a laugh everywhere I can. Because I do believe, like in Reader's Digest, they say laughter is best medicine.
Yeah,
Totally believe it. So, well, all right. Well, we've wrapped up for tonight, and we encourage you to, again, subscribe to our channel, because when we get to 1,000 viewers and 4,000 watch hours, we are going to give away some fabulous prizes. Right now, we have that Kobe Bryant Laker jersey there. We actually have the Cam Newton jersey, as well as this hat. We have the Eric Javits purse, and we will be adding some more items.
We're going to add some naughty to the nice. You have to tune in and see what it is.
So we will show you next week exactly what we're going to be adding to the basket. And on that note, we needed to ask you to really write into us and tell us if you like our topics tonight, enjoyed the discussion. We want to know what's your frequency.
Share your stories.
Share your stories. Until next week.
Bye.
Deuces. Okay, that was quick.